Hello, friend. Welcome to Grandpa's Horror Stories. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment your own stories. Do you remember a real-life horror story covered in the media that shook you to the core? What was the story? Share it in the comments. Story number 11. Anonymous caller. Around 1980, a single mother of a toddler, Dorothy Jane Scott, started getting threatening phone calls at work. She paid the calls little attention until one night when the ominous voice on the other end of the line instructed her to look outside. On her car's windscreen was a single withered rose. The stalker would alternate between declaring his love for her and making threats of physical harm. The caller's voice sounded familiar, but Dorothy couldn't place who it was, and she never got to find out. At a staff meeting, Dorothy noticed that one of her co-workers appeared unwell. She and another co-worker took the man to a neighboring hospital. Dorothy went outside to the parking lot while her co-workers waited for the prescription to be filled. She wasn't seen again after that. According to her coworkers' testimony, they went outside to meet her in the parking lot after she didn't return. They suspected a problem had occurred with her son when they spotted her car rushing away as soon as they left the building. Neither her son nor anyone else ever saw or heard from Dorothy again. Her burned remains were discovered at a construction site for years. Later, the discovery of a collection of dog bones next to her remains added even more confusion to the case. No one has ever been found guilty or detained on suspicion. The caller has never been located. Story number 12. Haunted Elsa Doll. The creepy, old-fashioned porcelain doll with a Victorian appearance, red lips, rosy cheeks, and blue eyes, referring to Annabelle, may come to mind when one thinks of a haunted doll. However, it's unlikely that anyone still keeps one in their house, unless that house is Warren's Occult Museum in Monroe, Con. However, those dolls are not the only ones getting possessed. Disney's Frozen Elsa doll, given as a Christmas 2013 gift in the Houston region, made headlines when it appeared to start acting paranormal. For 2 years, the doll was working as it was technically supposed to, reciting phrases from the movie and singing Let It Go when a button was pressed. In 2015, it started randomly alternating between English and Spanish languages. The woman who purchased the doll claimed that, even with its switch off, the doll would start speaking and singing randomly. In December 2019, the family chose to get rid of the Elsa doll. Despite tossing it in the garbage, the family eventually discovered it hidden inside a bench in their living room weeks later. Following the discovery, Elsa started to speak and sing solely in Spanish, soon after which the family made another attempt to scrap the Elsa doll. The doll was double-bagged and put at the bottom of the garbage can, which was soon picked up by waste collectors. The family left for a trip sometime later, but when they were back, the haunted doll was waiting in their backyard. In their last attempt, the family sent Elsa through the mail to a Minnesotan family friend who fastened the possessed doll to the front bumper of his truck. According to the woman's most recent update in October 2020, the doll hasn't returned to Houston yet. Story number 13. The Monster Killer. Yang Zhenhai, dubbed the Monster Killer by the Chinese media, is thought to be the worst serial killer in China's modern history. From 1999 to 2003, he was accountable for more than 67 homicides and 23 rapes. The homicides committed by Young occurred between 1999 and 2003. He would break into his victims' homes at night, slaying every person inside, primarily farmers, with axes, hammers, and shovels, often an entire family. He always wore brand new clothing and oversized shoes. In one horrific homicide case, Zenai forced the victim's husband and their 6-year-old daughter to watch as he raped the woman. He slayed them afterward. At the time of his arrest, various media sources claimed that Yang's motivation for the homicides was revenge against society due to a bad breakup. According to rumors, his girlfriend broke up with him due to his past convictions for rape and stealing. On February 14, 2004, Zenai was executed by firing squad. Story number 14. The coroner. I used to work in a hospital in the department, and we did a number of overnight rollouts as well as on-call work. Response when issues occurred overnight. Many weird things happened or appeared to happen. The thing that struck me as oddest was when I saw the coroner running at full speed down the corridor in the opposite direction towards the morgue. This guy, an older guy in his 50s or so, was going at full speed. I had never seen him above an amble before, but this time he was really going for it. As he got close to me, he yelled, "Out of the way." I got another live one. I am not sure what was more disturbing, the fact that he was dealing with what I could only assume was a deceased body that now appeared to be alive, or the fact he said another. Story number 15. Donald Henry P. Gaskins, Jr., American serial killer Donald Henry Gaskins, boldly proclaimed as stabbed, shot, drowned, and poisoned hundreds of people. Due to his small frame, his friends and relatives referred to him as Pee-wee. He was under 130 pounds and about 5 feet tall. Despite asserting that he slayed between 100 and 110 people, investigators never discovered concrete proof of the homicides. 10 of the 15 victims Gaskins was verified to have slain during his lifetime were under 25 years old, and 5 were underage. After attempting self-harm in prison, Gaskins was executed in the electric chair on September 6, 1991. Story number 16. The Butcher Baker. Robert Hansen was a reliable husband, father, and respected part of Anchorage society. The monikered Butcher Baker, however, held many sinister secrets. Between 1971 and 1983, he abducted, assaulted, and slayed at least 17 women aged 16 to 41. Hansen is thought to have commenced homicides around 1972. His modus operandi involved picking up a sex worker in his car and, while holding her at gunpoint, driving her to his house where he would rape her. He would then take the victim to a remote location where he would hunt her like a wild animal before finalizing the demise. Hansen admitted that he took pleasure in using a knife and a gun to prey on his victims. Additionally, he acknowledged that he had little regard for women or their feelings. Hansen considered them to be just animals, things to be slain and hunted. In 1983, he was arrested, found guilty, and given a 461 years prison term with no chance of parole. He passed away in 2014 at 75 from natural causes due to lingering health conditions. Story number 17. The torture of Sylvia Likens. The homicide of Sylvia Likens was dubbed the worst crime ever perpetrated in Indiana. 50 years later, the title remains. On October 26, 1965, police discovered Sylvia Likens' malnourished body sprawled on a filthy mattress in the Indianapolis home of 37-year-old Gertrude Benishevsky, mother of 7 and the mind behind the girl's horrific demise. The body was covered in more than 150 wounds, including burns and cuts. Reportedly, Likens' body was used as a practice dummy for judo flips and punches, carving words into her stomach with a needle, and many more vicious attacks. Sylvia and her sister Jenny were housed with Benishevsky for $20 weekly by their carnival worker parents. However, Benishevsky beat the females, largely Sylvia, when the checks were late. Why neither Jenny nor Sylvia sought assistance before things got out of hand is, in fact, one of the unsolved mysteries surrounding the case. However, Benishevsky wasn't the only one responsible for Sylvia's demise. A large group of local kids watched or participated in the vicious attacks, along with some of Benishevsky's kids, some as young as 10. Even more astonishing is that all the criminals involved eventually got off on their misdeeds, some following laughably short prison terms. Story number 18. The Killer Clown. John Wayne Gacy was well known for dressing up as a clown at children's parties, but his clown masks covered a demonic visage. Between 1972 and 1978, he murdered and tortured 33 young men and boys in Cook County, Illinois. Gacy would usually entice a victim to his house and deceive him into donning handcuffs on the pretense of showing him a magic trick. Then, after torturing and raping his victim, he would asphyxiate or fatally strangle him with a garrote. In Gacy's childhood, he was often named Sissy, and Mama's boy would probably grow up gay since his mother always sought to protect him from his father's abuse. Although Gacy believed he was never good enough in his father's eyes, he continued to adore him nonetheless. In 1949, the father of Gacy received word that he and another boy had been observed inappropriately touching a young girl. His father punished him by giving him a razor strop. The same year, Gacy would occasionally be used sexually in a vehicle by a family friend. The first homicide committed by Gacy was on January 3, 1972. At the age of 29, all of Gacy's slayings were carried out within his ranch-style home close to Norwich, a Chicago suburb. Most of Gacy's victims were buried in the basement of his house. The remains of his final 4 victims were dumped in Wisconsin's Des Plaines River. In 1994, the killer clown was apprehended and executed by lethal injection. Story number 19. Botched exorcism of Kennedy Ife. In August 2016, Kennedy Ife, 26, of North London, reportedly started acting strangely and aggressively after experiencing throat pain. Before his family restrained him to a bed using cable ties and excessive force, he allegedly bit his father, threatened to cut off his own penis, and spoke of having a python or snake inside of him. According to his brother, Kennedy needed to be restrained because he would hurt either himself or his family members. After Kennedy had been confined to his bed for 3 days, his brother called emergency services and explained that he had been complaining of dehydration. When the emergency services arrived, he was pronounced deceased at 10:17 a.m. The court was informed that the family spent those 3 days trying to heal Kennedy through restraint and prayer. All 7 of Kennedy IFE's relatives were charged with manslaughter, false imprisonment, and allowing a vulnerable adult to pass away. Kennedy IFE's body had over 60 wounds, including what seemed to be a bite. On March 14, 2019, following a 4-day jury deliberation, all 7 family members were found not guilty of manslaughter. Story number 20. The only passenger. If you've ever been to Portland, or you know that our public transportation system is pretty nice, and the MAX system has a tram that runs between the airport and the city center until fairly late at night. I was coming home from seeing my family at Christmas, and my flight came in very late, so I was lucky enough to catch the last MAX home. Because it was so late, it was just me and a guy who looked homeless sitting a few seats ahead of me. He was sleeping with his head against the window. I paid little attention to him, but noticed his head lolling around and wondered if he was wasted. Anyway, we get to the city center, and there are cops waiting there because apparently the homeless guy sitting in front of me is being escorted off the tram. Airport security had tried to get him off before and thought he was ignoring them and refusing to move. And that's when both the cops and I find out that the guy had been deceased the whole time. He had overdosed at some point before the MAX had even arrived at the airport. We had been riding on that dark midnight ride alone together with one of us fairly deceased.